Hi again, everybody, and welcome back to another Facebook Live show here on COSA TV. It's Greg Blanchard with you once again. Hope you're having a wonderful long weekend so far and getting to enjoy that somewhat. And great to see that over the past week or so, we're starting to hear of some return dates for racing for many different jurisdictions around North America, and here in Ontario, a date of June 5th is set at this point in time. So wonderful to see, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on tonight. But certainly a bittersweet weekend. Tonight would have been the final of this year's Confederation Cup at Flamborough Downs. So obviously that's not going to happen. That race has been postponed and will be moved to later in the season. But we're going to celebrate it tonight nonetheless. We've got a couple of the past race callers at Flamborough, the two Kens, Warkentin and Middleton, are special guests tonight. We'll take a trip down memory lane and talk Confederation Cup, plus the first ever virtual edition of the Confederation Cup. It's all coming up next on this edition of COSA TV. And welcome back again, Greg Blanchard. Wonderful to have you with us for this Confederation Cup edition of COSA TV. We will be talking Confederation Cup for tonight's show. We'll be looking back at some past great champions. We've got some trivia. We've got a lot to get to tonight, including the first ever virtual edition of the Confederation Cup. That's going to be a lot of fun. But to kick it off tonight, let's give you a look at our poll question, and we'd love to hear from you. If you've got an opinion on this, leave it for us in the comment section. We want to know which of these drew the most attention when their Confederation Cup appearance happened. Was it Jate Lobel, Some Beach Somewhere, Cam Fella, or Matt's Scooter? 4 great champions of the Confederation Cup. Which one drew the most attention the year they appeared at fabulous Flamborough Downs? And again, have your say. Leave some questions for us as well in the comment section. We would certainly love to hear from you. And thank you for joining us once again. And time now to welcome in our special guests this evening, the two Kens, Ken Middleton and Ken Warkentin. Guys, great to have you with us. And just for the purposes of saving confusion tonight, I'm going to refer to Ken Middleton as Kenny and Ken Warkentin as Ken. How does that sound?
That's what my mom called me.
Perfect. All right, and
they called
guys,
me a few other things, but
sure, I don't doubt that. Great to have you both with us tonight. Let's start with Ken Warkentin. Ken, it's been a while since we've chatted with you. Just how are things going down in New Jersey as we start to hear more and more jurisdictions getting ready to start racing again, including neighboring New York?
Yeah, Governor Cuomo last, I guess it was Saturday or earlier this week, announced that New York racing was going to open the 1st of June. So hopefully we can follow suit here with Governor Murphy. He did not address any racing news yesterday. I believe he comes back on again on Monday. As many people in the industry know, Mr. Corral, Jeff Corral, is hoping that we're going to be back on Friday, June the 5th. So maybe we'll hear something. My best bet is we're going to hear something this week that's close to that date with no spectators and so on. But we are in a hot spot here. I live in Essex County, about 20 minutes from the Meadowlands. And they are in, the Meadowlands is in Bergen County, and we're 1-2 in terms of statistics. And, we were hard hit here, hard hit in New York City, as everybody knows. Everybody has a phone and everybody knows what the news is. But we've been trying to keep busy here with projects around the house and various things. And my wife works from home. Thankfully, she was able to work from home. My kids school online. I've done some voiceover work. The rug was really ripped out from under us here. We were going full tilt at one point, working freehold, Meadowlands, reffing like 8 to 10 hockey games a week, and playing once a week. and it was just all of a sudden stop. And the first couple of weeks were kind of weird. It felt like, well, maybe it was a vacation, maybe we needed it. Now it's the twilight zone, and we're just anxious to get back. We miss work, we miss the camaraderie. The isolation hasn't been fun. I've been able to get out every day and walk and do some running and yard work and so on. But it's been pretty quiet around here. When I go for my walks, I do not pass a lot of people. And the ones I do pass, I would say the majority of them, even if they're walking by themselves, they're wearing masks. So, and they closed the parks here for a while. It's a strange time. But I get, now we're getting the feeling that we're going to get ready to come back. And so, hopefully we won't be doing this too much, and we'll be doing more of the live stuff.
Sure. And Kenny, I know the last time we spoke with you, you were talking about your new farm and some of the horses. Yep. So I know that's keeping you busy. How are things going around there? I'm sure you've got some projects in the works.
Yeah, projects every day, pretty much. Just had some more fence put up. Both of my broodmares have foaled out now, so that's a lot of stress off my plate. Just keeping busy. I've got two 2-year-olds I'm training to at Richard Moreau's farm. So yeah, I've had no problem keeping busy at all. Like Ken said, you find things to do. It's just you want to do the thing that we're missing the most, and that's get back to work. Get back to seeing our friends in the paddock and in the grandstand, and of course our fan base too. They're longing for some racing like everybody else. So let's get back as quick as we can.
Yeah, and how happy were you? I'm sure, like everybody else in the industry here in the province, to see horse racing named specifically in phase 1 of the reopening here of businesses in Ontario, and now with a date of June 5th out there. So something to look forward to, right, for the industry?
Oh, 100%. Our crew at Woodbine Entertainment, they've obviously been busy working with the government, putting protocols in place, just waiting for the green light, waiting for the word go. So it's been given. Now it's up to us to be as safe as we can, as obviously as respectful as everybody else in personal space, and just play rules, smart, and be healthy.
And it brings me to just a quick question I'll ask both of you. I'll start with you, Kenny. When you ponder a return to work, I don't even know if you've had a conversation yet in terms of your specific role calling races. Do you think you're going to be able to do that on site? Is there talk of potentially doing that virtually, or even had that discussion yet?
No, haven't had that. I'm sure there'd be a bit of a delay if you were having to do with their site. Not. I know before the shutdown, right to where it did, we're on operation up into the press box, what have you. We're fortunate that way. The judges' stand could be a little bit different. I think maybe we could see some differences there. But as far as I'm on an island just like Mr. Warkentin. I've got my own room and I'm separated from everybody else. So I don't see that changing.
And I'll throw that at you, Ken. Kenny alluded to it. Maybe there would be a delay in a signal. I mean, could you even do something like that virtually?
A couple of things. I read an article maybe yesterday, the day before, that when Major League Baseball comes back, the announcers, just like the Korean baseball that's on now, when you flip around, you see all sorts of things. So Korean baseball, the announcers are obviously American, and they're in a studio, in America somewhere, and they're 10 feet apart or 6 feet apart. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I'm sure that, when like Ken Middleton said, when I go to work, I don't even use the elevator. I go up the stairs. I use the escalator, the stairs, and I'm by myself. So that hence the strange personality. But it seems like a doable thing. It's just that everybody has to be, you can't live in fear, but you also have to follow the protocols and the safety measures that are dictated by the health officials. And keep your guard up and just use some common sense.
All right. Well, listen, let's talk about your time at Flamborough Downs, the both of you. And I know the memories are fond for each of you, and it's where you got your early starts in the business. And before we get to that, though, we're going to bring up the field page for something really interesting tonight, first time ever, virtual edition of the Confederation Cup. There's a look at the star-studded field, and it really reminds us how many great champions have graced the Flamborough Downs Oval over the years. There's a look at 8 past winners, and they comprise the field tonight. Art Major, Matt Scooter, Some Beach Somewhere, American Ideal, Abercrombie, Cam Fella, Jade Lobel, and On the Road Again. So that's the field for our first ever virtual edition of the Confederation Cup, and we will have that for you later tonight. And we should give a shout out to current track announcer Gary Guy. Unfortunately, not able to join us tonight. We wish he could be here, but he will be here in spirit, and we were able to get him to provide the race call for the virtual edition of the Confederation Cup. So looking forward to seeing that a little bit later. But yeah, Ken, as you look back at that, and I'm sure that brings back memories, seeing some of those great horses, and you had the pleasure of calling many of them. But talk about how you first came to get hired at Flamborough Downs. So when was that, and how did it all come about?
Well, it was in the early 80s. Right out of college, I worked at a radio station, CHEX, in Peterborough. I was only there for maybe 3 or 4 months, and I walked up and introduced myself to a fellow that was the announcer at Flamborough at the time. His name was Wayne Reed. He's no longer with us. And he, shortly thereafter, after I started at the radio station, was going to move on and go and work for the Toronto Police Department as a dispatcher. He later went and worked for Canada Pension. And I went and I drove from Peterborough to Flamborough one night to audition for the job. And it was in a blinding snowstorm, and I must have went like 10 miles an hour because I was stuck behind one of those snow plows and salters on the 401. But I made it there. I called a couple races. Charlie Juravinsky called a couple weeks later and said, "Would you like to come to Flamborough Downs and join our family?" The Flamborough family, as he used to call it. And I jumped at the chance because I got to move back to Toronto, made a few more bucks, and it was a great opportunity. It was a lot of fun, and I was able to part of the year we only raced 2 days a week. I supplemented my income as a disc jockey, a mobile disc jockey. I was also a disc jockey in some of the bars and restaurants and discotheques back then, and that's basically how I got to Flamborough. By introducing myself and working at some of the smaller tracks and getting my name out there. And the judges who rotate around, and I guess they still do, they got word of this kid that can fill in, and he won't cause a huge calamity. So, somehow my phone number got circulated, and we did some Orangeville, some Elmira, Clinton, Goderich, all those tracks, and got some experience, got our feet wet. And Flamborough came calling one day. Charlie came calling.
Sure. And we might get a chance to talk a little more about your disco days during the show tonight. Kenny Middleton, I'm not sure if he was into disco or not, or that was maybe a little before our time, I guess. But Ken, talk about how you ended up at Flamborough Downs, and had to be a thrill at the time, right? I mean, it was a big league, beautiful facility, and the likes of Charles Juravinsky running the show. It was a real honor, wasn't it, to be able to work there?
Yeah, you better believe it. I was a kid who grew up in a cornfield in Elmira, so watching Mennonites go by in buggies pulling horses. Yeah. Another Ken who couldn't be with us tonight, Ken Hornick, good buddy of mine, and Mr. Warkentin's. He shot me some news down the pipeline that Flamborough was going to be looking for an announcer because he took on another position. So he really helped me get, my foot in the door there. And yeah, I loved my time at Flamborough. I appreciated the opportunity. I met a lot of great people, horsemen, employees at the racetrack too. And it was kind of the chance to build a foundation to what's become a career in the industry. So yeah, very thankful for everything everybody did for me at Flamborough Downs and the opportunity that I was given. Called some big league races, got to meet some great people, and enjoyed every minute of it.
And a real stepping stone. And I remember when you got the job, I was a fledgling young announcer as well from Prince Edward Island, and I had heard that they were on the lookout for somebody, but by the time I could get a tape in the mail and up there, they'd already got back to me and said they'd hired Ken Middleton. So I've never held that against you, Kenny, just for the record. But no, I mean, it worked out great. And I had a chance to eventually call there and had a brief stint at Flamborough as well. And yeah, I echo the sentiment. I mean, and a real stepping stone for everybody in their careers. And you know, when you think of Charlie Jurovinski, I think Charlie took pride in that, didn't he? That you know, guys like yourselves went on and had the careers you did at the biggest tracks in the sport. Ken, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I did work at a track prior to that too. Kawartha Downs is really where I kind of got my feet wet as well. And that job just, you know, sometimes it's right place, right time, and networking. And you got to remember back in the 80s, there were no cell phones, no internet, no social media, none of that stuff. And you know, you basically had to just kind of walk up and introduce yourself to people. And word gets around. You know, I got a chance to meet Earl Lennox. He gave me a leg up. The guy that the announcer that preceded him was Jack Stevens for the old Ontario Jockey Club, and Jack was just a great guy. One night he was late. He was filling in for Earl. There was construction on the Gardiner Expressway, and he missed the first race. He actually got there just as they were going behind the gate, and I had given the changes and post parade and all that stuff, and the judges told me to go in there, and I called, and he said, "Do you know the horses?" And I said, "I think so." And he says, "Here," and he hands the headset to me, and you know, I didn't mess it up. Earl and Jack both had told me, if you want to come and do the qualifiers, you're welcome to it. Sometimes the security or the electrician there would turn the sound system on, and that gave me a big thrill to hear yourself echo through the empty grandstand. You know, so that there were a lot of opportunities and a lot of chances to get your feet wet. You know, Elmira, I mentioned that, Orangeville. There was a gentleman by the name of Paul Dubiel who filled in. I don't know if you remember him or you even know him. I don't know if he's still around. He would fill in for Earl Lennox. He was the guy that would say roaring up, you know, the elongated roaring up on the outside call. He gave me a lot of chances to work at the smaller tracks whenever he was away or couldn't make it. And you know, as Ken Middleton pointed out, you know, I met a lot of great people at Flamborough, and one of them who's still my best friend, and his name is John Holmes, and I think everybody in the world knows he's my best friend. And on my last night at Flamborough, one guy called me and wished me luck, and his name is Jim Whalen, and to this day, Jim and I are good friends. So. You know, there's some friendships that last a long time, and great acquaintances, and people still, now with the social media, people still keep in touch and say, "Hey, how's it going?" They reach out, you know, say, "How's it going?" Especially in these times too. I hope everything's okay. So.
Absolutely. Well, listen, you guys mentioned it earlier. There was another Ken who also called races right in between the pair of you, Ken Hornick, and there's a photo. Yeah. We're going to take a look at a few photographs that Ken was able to dig up from the archives, and it's a lot of fun to look back. What's the backstory behind this one, Ken?
2011, I believe. I'm wearing the same shirt tonight, by the way. I had it dry cleaned just for a special occasion, but I worked with Ken Middleton, of course, that night. And I believe the winner was Best of Best Hanover, and Jack Moiseyev. It was either the trainer or the trainer's father, I can't remember, had cancer at the time. So it was a real emotional winner's circle interview and an emotional win. And a great drive by Jack Moiseyev on Best of Best Hanover. But Ken Hornick, I think, knew we were going to be there that night. So he just happened to be driving by and popped in and told us all about his latest endeavors. And Ken was a real talented guy. You know, he called the races there, and he was a play-by-play, a hockey announcer as well. So, and a real character. So, again, a very good acquaintance, and one of the people that I you know, when I think of Flamborough Downs, I think Ken Hornick.
And Kenny, I mean, people were starting to wonder, I'm sure, was the first name Ken a prerequisite to be able to call races at the Downs?
Yeah, no doubt. It was funny because they had a roast for Charles Juravinski one night at Mohawk Racetrack, and I was asked to be one of the roasters, and I thought, what is it that I could do? And it came up with a top 10 list. Everybody always said Charlie was a cheap guy, which we obviously know he isn't, but I came up with a top 10 reasons why Charles Juravinski is cheap, and one of them I said he's so cheap he had to hire 3 guys in a row named Ken just so he didn't change the name on the office door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Classic.
I still remember when there was a strike at Flamborough. The employees were on strike, and so I disrupted racing there for a while, and some of the at the entrance to that long laneway down Confederation Cup Lane, there were some really interesting drawings or caricatures of Mr. Juravinski. And there were a lot of characters there, like Jack Garr, the director of security. I had dinner with him every night, and all he talked about was Scotty Bowman and the Montreal Canadiens. And it was Horst Stewart, the head of food services, Ernst Mangold, the chef, and the list goes on. One of my favorite Flamborough Downs stories is I came to work one day, and I used to come very early, like maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and I came. I must have come from Gulliver's, that lake park area, where there's a swimming facilities and so on nearby. So it was a real windy day. So I decided, you know what, I got a kite in the trunk of my car. I'm going to fly a kite, for a few minutes here. So I went here I am in the parking lot flying a kite. And Charles, I guess, had seen me because he spied on everybody. He had binoculars, and he was spying everybody in the backstretch and so on. He must have saw me. Well, obviously he did. And he made some sort of announcement. He said, "Ken, get in here. Stop flying your kite. Get in here. You got work to do." And I get upstairs, and he's laughing because he scared the hell out of me. The boss is yelling at you and so on.
I was going to say, that's something you'd see Charlie doing, something off the wall like that. That's the kind of guy he was. Let's continue on with a look at some of these great old photos, a look at some of the old program covers. And the Confederation Cup obviously had a background story to the name, and they wanted a race representative of a national event, and it was outlined here in the old Confederation Cup program covers, and they really do bring back a lot of memories. Kenny, when you look back at these and these old collector's items, I'm sure there's some things that you've forgotten about over the years that those memories come flooding back.
You know what, the funny thing is nowadays for me, I have no problem remembering 1987 and J. Lobel winning the Confederation Cup. But if you asked me who won the Confederation Cup 2 years ago, I probably couldn't tell you. I just remember pulling in the driveway, driving down the laneway, and I thought the coolest thing ever at Flamborough Downs was a couple weeks leading up to the Confederation Cup, all the light posts down the laneway and the entrance, they had plywood cutouts of the Confederation Cup trophy itself with the winner name on it year after year after year. As you drove down the laneway, it was one winner and then the next one. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I don't know why, but I just did. I loved it.
By the way, if you just a bit of history here, I used to in these programs I had written up Confederation Cup history and just some of the background on the horses and the race itself in 1977. Kirk McKinnon, the former director of racing and publicity, suggested to Charles Juravinski, who was then the vice president and general manager, that the Flamborough Downs, because of the race's stature and the track stature, they should have a major race to attract people's attention and highlight the racing season, not unlike any of the established races. So it certainly called attention to the racetrack, and it became kind of the jug of the North, because what was great about Confederation Cup Day, Ken Middleton, were the backstretch parties after. And some of these parties were epic, absolutely epic. I mean, they had stages set up with rock bands, and and it was very much like the Little Brown Jug. And I hate to say it, but after the Gold Cup and Saucer, that kind of put it to shame, because there was some serious partying going on there, and a lot of music and a lot of bands and a lot of stuff, a lot of people. I mean,
A
a
lot
lot
of
of
beer, a lot of
these old,
beers.
oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these Confederation Cups, you see record crowds, 7,000, 8,000 people. I mean, the place was jammed with people. And it was a day card, so we all looked forward to that post-race party in the backstretch. We couldn't wait to get back there and celebrate, no matter who won.
Well, there's always been a lot of maritime flavor at Flamborough Downs, so that probably had something to do with those after parties in the backstretch. There's another great look at an old program with several of the past great champions listed right there on the road again at the top. A write-up, Kenny. Now, Ken, did you do this particular write-up this year?
Oh, no, that's from an old publication. I think it was the 10-year anniversary of the Confederation Cup, and we put together almost like a brochure and a collection of old articles. I might have redone this, and you can see right down at the bottom there that the first day opening night was Wednesday, April 9th, 1975. And the Confederation Cup was part of the Canadian Pacing Triple Crown. The other two jewels were the North America Cup and the Prix d'Été at the time. So there was a lot of history and a lot of great horses and a lot of great drivers and trainers shipped in. You know, you got John Campbell. Oh, wait a minute, what's that? That's the Miss Confederation Cup swimsuit contest. We did that a couple of years in a row. And those were models from a modeling agency in Hamilton. And Charlie was, he just loved that stuff. He reveled in it. And and the same gal won each year. You can tell why she won.
One of the few times I've seen someone's outfit rival Charlie. That's
well, I had
impressive.
to get the white shoes in. I had to get the white shoes in there, and I came out of. I emerged from a limousine to the tune of "Sharp Dressed Man" ZZ Top, and that's Richard Jacob, former general manager. Richard was a lot of fun to work with. He let me. He loose lined me every night. Said, "Go ahead, have some fun." And that was back in the day when I was the lead singer of Tears for Fears. So after the
nice flow, bro.
Yeah, after the races, I would venture off to some club in Toronto and jam away. So
wow,
yeah,
that is a trip down memory lane, and a really nice collage here showing the evolution of the Downs. I think guys, for anyone that's never been to Flamborough Downs, I think they'd be probably surprised at what a beautiful property it is. Kenny, you mentioned it, the drive-in, the long laneway up to the grandstand, you could see it from the road. I mean, when you went to Flamborough Downs, especially in its heyday, it was an experience.
Yeah, and Charlie kept a close eye on, just how meticulous it was maintained, from the maintenance people to the track staff. Inside the grandstand, he'd be picking up garbage if it was laying on the ground. If there was a candy wrapper, he'd be the first guy to pick it up. He'd patrol the backstretch, and if something was out of line in there, something was out of order, a cooler was hanging up outside the barn or something like that, and he didn't like it, he'd be the first guy to come in the barn and ask them to change it, and they did. Everybody respected the guy. Everybody loved fighting with the guy, but at the end of the day, everybody loves the guy. He's just one of those likable guys, Charlie. And I'm sure I speak for Ken Warkentin, Ken Hornick, and everybody else that's worked for him. Great all-around guy, and I just relished the opportunity to be there, and I was proud to work there, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
I've got to tell you a quick story there. On I think it was my last week at Flamborough, and I was on my way out. I was going to Northfield Park, and I had made my decision to go. He called me up and he said, "How's it going?" I go, "Good." He goes, "You've got a bright future here at fabulous Flamborough Downs." Okay, thanks a lot. And I hung up. I said, "No, I don't." So he was. I think he was just playing with me, but we'll see you next week. No, you won't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he was that
just
kind of a guy,
like,
the character.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And like you say, as soon as you met him, he's got this presence to him like no one else. And I remember the first time I met him for my job interview. I walk in, I'm kind of intimidated. Obviously, he's a larger than life figure, and he walks up, asks me how I'm doing. I said, "I'm great, Charlie. How are you?" And first thing out of his mouth, he says, "Not too bad, Greg, but these hemorrhoids have been just killing me lately." I said, "That's Charlie." Talk about an icebreaker right
Yeah.
off the bat. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, just a great guy, and like you say, the type of guy you loved working for, and you were kind of proud to work there for sure. Well, listen, let's dive into some of these past Confederation Cup races. This is going to be some fun tonight to take a trip down memory lane. Of course, working our way up to watching the virtual edition of the Confederation Cup later on tonight on the show. But it all started back in 1977, 2 years into the track's existence, as Ken mentioned earlier. And this race was devised, and I would say the first edition really got it off on the right foot. The winner was Governor Skipper, one of the great 3-year-old colt pacers of that era, with driver John Chapman. We're going to take a look back at the first ever edition of the Confederation Cup, and we'll talk a little bit more about that after the replay.
Half-mile marker in 58-1. Hobart the Eagle is forcing the pace from the outside. Governor Skipper is second at the rail. Candid Camera holds down in trade. Rock and Wave fourth on the outside. River Captain looks for Racing Room at the rail in 5. Moving down the backstretch they go, pacing on their way to the three-quarters. Governor Skipper has come on once again. Hobart the Eagle second on the outside. Candid Camera third at the rail. Rock and Wave gains ground in for the three-quarters, 1:27 and 2. Pacing the final quarter mile, it's Governor Skipper by a half a length. Hobart the Eagle on the outside. Candid Camera looks for Racing Room along the rail. Rock and Wave to the outside and four in the stretch drive. It's Governor Skipper. Governor Skipper shows the way in the drive to the wire. Hobart the Eagle on the outside. Candid Camera looks for Racing Room between horses. It's Governor Skipper. It's gonna be Governor Skipper. Candid Camera, and here we are.
That was Governor Skipper back in 1977, and he would go on to earn over $1 million. So, you know, I think that just speaks to the stature of the horses. This race was able to draw Kenny right off the get-go, and that continued. The best of the best were there year in and year out.
Yeah, and you had the classy John Chapman there as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's why people lined up 10 deep at the fence. You know, you saw them in the backstretch in the replay. The paddock was just flooding. People were flooding outside. They lined up right across that big white reflector fence in the backstretch in front of the grandstand. There were 20 deep at the fence back then. You know, it was the only game in town, but it was a race that still held a lot of stature. The afternoon cards, to me, were the best. They had a combination of Ontario Sire Stake races throughout the afternoon. Then you had 3 full Confederation Cup elimination first heat fields, and then you got 9 of them coming back for the final. So it was jam-packed start to finish. You'd have a preferred or an invite on the card, and it was just one of the most enjoyable experiences for me as a race fan to go to and attend when Ken was calling them or anybody else is calling them. I relished the opportunity to be a fan that day for that particular card.
Yep. You guys, Ken, do you remember that particular edition? Were you a race fan by that point in your life?
I was, but I wasn't quite into the game as deeply at that time. I was still, I guess I was still in high school, late high school, early college, and just starting to get my feet wet. And it wasn't until Abercrombie the next year, the following year, when I started to become a real, hardcore race fan and follow the game. But Ken pointed out the fact that it was an afternoon car. We got a lot of good coverage too. It was on TSN, the real TSN1 for many years. They would bring in a live crew. John Wells, Earl Lennox typically would do the color. And yeah, that was the other thing is the great cards. The quality of the card, it was the best of the best as far as the top 3-year-olds, and you had the great John Chapman there. You had the great drivers showing up. John Campbell would actually come to Flamborough Downs. And Bill O'Donnell and Ron Waples and on and on.
You mentioned John Campbell. One of the very few races he was never able to win. Pretty amazing to think about that now. Yeah. But Ken, it was 5 years after that you got to call the great Cam Fella, 1982. We all know what he did in his career and the following that he had. Describe the atmosphere when Cam Fella came to town that year.
Well, he was kind of a nondescript 2-year-old, and it was a night card, and it was a terrible day from what I remember back in 1982. That's a long time ago. There were 2 elimination heats, so he kind of intimidated a few people and horses from entering. The top 4 came back for a final, went for $125,000, which was pretty good back then. The Cam took the first heat over Watering Hole, Saki's Adam, Ideal Wilco, 57-3 on a sloppy track. And I mentioned he had a nondescript 2-year-old year, son of Most Happy Fella, blossomed as the sports top. He really came into his own as a 3-year-old, winning 17 of 21, almost $500,000 for Pat Crow. And the owners were Norman Faulkner and Norm Clements. Mr. Faulkner called me a few months later. He was at Flamborough for something, I don't know what, and he called me up and he says he thanked me for calling the horse the pacing machine. And I said, well, Dan Patch maybe was the first pacing machine, but I kind of stole that. They purchased him as a 2-year-old. The second heat goes to Cole Harbour, Ron Waples over Icarus Lobel, Perfect Out, and Armbro Andy, 58-4. Cole Harbour, son of Albatross, who had lost his previous 10 starts, but he still paid $4.90. I'll never forget that. And then the final Cam Fella gets the rail. Cole Harbour, post 2, followed by Icarus Lobel, Watering Hole, Perfect Out, Saki's Adam, Ideal Wilco, Armbro Andy. Cole Harbour and Saki's Adam were a Ron Waples stable entry. So that set the stage for what was about to happen. And I was sick as a dog that day. I had a sinus infection. I was terrible. It was my first Confederation Cup. I was all excited about it, and I felt like
an
crap.
Announcer's worst nightmare, for sure.
Bad time.
Kenny, as a young race fan, were you there that day?
For Cam Fella, yeah, I was there. Yeah, obviously didn't have the racing bug to the degree that I had it later in life, but that was quite an experience seeing him. I remember so many of them. And that was a night affair. And like Ken said, it was a dirty, rainy, cold night, uncharacteristic for the time of year. But yeah, what a great list of horses that race had. Unbelievable, really.
Yeah. All right, let's have a look at it. This is 1982, the pacing machine, Cam Fella winning the Confederation Cup.
Less than 3/8 to go. Cole Harbour is locked in 5th along the rail. Sarkis Adam on the outside 6th. On the inside, Ideal Wilco trailing Armbro Andy. They're all chasing Cam Fella, the pacing machine. Past 3/4, 1:29-2. It's Cam Fella, Icarus Lobel on the outside. Along the rail, Watering Hole has lots in reserve. Perfect Out looking to go 3 wide. He's got a ton of horse, and Doug Brown has him moving. On the inside, Cole Harbour is 5th. Outside, Saki's Adam coming on, Ideal Wilco trailing Armbro Andy. In the drive to the wire, they're going after Confederation Cup 6. It's Cam Fella. He's going to win it. A battle for the other positions. Cam Fella, the winner of the final in 1:58-1.
Yeah, so not the fastest ever edition of the Cup, 58-1, but you mentioned the weather conditions. And Ken, we can hear it. It's funny to listen. All of us, right, calling races from 20, 30 years ago, you just sound different, Ken, and people who heard that and didn't know that you were the race caller at the time might not even be able to put it together. But what do you think now when you listen back to your early race calling?
I don't like it. I don't like listening to it. I was just a little boy. But as you heard, Cam Fella, the legendary Cam Fella, picks up his nickname. 2-time horse of the year, and we all know he reeled off 28 in a row the following year, and he was a $100 million stallion. And he was despite being a ridgeling, we're reminded of that. He sired Hall of Famers like Eternal Cam Nation, Presidential Ball, Precious, Bunny, Cam's Card Shark, Cam Luck, Goalie Jeff, Camtastic, a winner of 61 of 80 career starts. So, I don't remember much. I was well medicated that day, and I got through it.
Absolutely. And I think you sell yourself short. I actually like your old race. I love your race calling today as well, but it's just fun to hear the evolution of a race caller over the course of their career. And Kenny, it'll be the same when we watch some of your old Confederation Cup calls tonight as well. Speaking of that, we have a question, first question of the night, and we want to thank all of you for tuning in once again this evening, and please, by all means, leave some comments and questions for us. The first one coming from Joe Garab wants to know, besides yourselves, what other announcers make you get out of your seats? Good question, and thank you, Joe. And Kenny, we'll start with you on that one.
Okay. Two guys, very vociferous individuals. Roger Houston, obviously, on Jug Day. That's a fantastic. He's very bombastic. He's very over the top and a lot of fun. He puts a lot of energy into his calls there. And Vance Cameron, he's got kind of a similar style on Old Home Week in Prince Edward Island, too. So those are two of the most animated guys. So if I was going to get out of my seat, they'd put the fear of God in me. I'd get out.
Well, I've got to agree with Vance. Yeah, Vance Cameron. He's a legend, and he's an icon. Whenever I get a chance, and I get a chance to go there and work Old Home Week with him the last 8 or 9 years, just a great guy. And there's nothing like, Vance Cameron and the Gold Cup and Saucer just kind of go hand in hand. And sometimes you can brace yourself for the boom just like that, but when it hits you, the whole crowd, you've been there. I mean, the crowd erupts and they get ready for all the cliches and the vernacular that he utters. On the thoroughbred side, a good buddy of mine, Larry Colmus, who I believe has called 9 Kentucky Derbies. He is, for me, he's my favorite thoroughbred race caller because he does justice to everything. He doesn't get too cute. He doesn't get too crazy. And he captures the moment just right. He's a true pro professional. And you have to be to work the Triple Crown and the Breeders' Cups on national television. So those are my two guys.
And a guy like Vance and Roger, I marvel at them to call the amount of races they do, whether it's Jug Week, whether it's Old Home Week, at the level of intensity that they do it with, and still have a voice at the end of the week. It's incredible. And I know when you're in the announcer's booth with Vance, he literally is coming out of his seat. He's putting so much into it. It's impressive to watch, no doubt about that. All right, we've got our first trivia question of the night. And if you want to play along with us tonight, just leave your answers for us in the comments section. And on a Cam Fella theme, who was Cam Fella's first $1 million performer? Cam Fella sired 16 winners of $1 million or more over the course of his career. Who was the first of those $1 million performers sired by the great Cam Fella? And again, we will recap those trivia questions at the end of the show. We're going to be drawing one name at random from all the winning answers tonight, and they'll win a $25 COSA gift card as well. We're going to 1984 next, and the great On the Road Again. Ken Middleton, one of 2 winners, eventually sent out by trainer Harry Polton. On the Road Again, the great champion, 44 for 61 in his career. As a fan at that time, what do you remember about him coming in?
Obviously, his reputation was second to none. But what I remember most about that was them playing On the Road Again, the song by Willie Nelson, over the loudspeakers as he's making his way back to the winner's circle. It was awesome. It was just perfect. It was like a Hollywood ending. The right horse won the race. They rolled the music, and everybody got on their feet, and everybody had a great day. So, yeah, it was perfect.
And Ken, can you set the stage for us? He came in, as Kenny said, with that incredible reputation, and it really was his race to win or lose that day.
Yeah, it was just a single dash. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, he was such a standout. And if I'm not mistaken, he was also a bargain purchase. I believe. Well, I'm gonna hope I get this right. I think they were the Gord and Isla Rumpel were the owners, and I believe they cut Charlie in on this horse. I'm not I'm not too sure on the history of the horse, Charlie Dravinsky, of course. But I believe at the end, when the race was over, Ken Middleton might be able to concur here. Didn't they present Buddy Gilmore with a Jaguar or something?
Yeah, something
they gave
like
him a
that.
car. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a car. I'm not sure if it was a Jaguar, but it was a car.
Oh, okay, yeah. So they made a big deal out of it, and he was this horse was certainly a sports car of a standardbred, So he was a dominant performer.
And I believe it was a track record at the time, so perhaps a promotion tied into that. I'm not sure, but let's take a look back at it. This is 1984, and one of the all-time great 3-year-old colt pacers on the road again, winning.
Confederation Cup 8 on its way. They're off and pacing on the road again on the outside. On the inside, Greener Pastures going for the lead. Betrayal on the rail as they round the first turn. Betrayal and Eve Filion. Greener Pastures tucks in behind. Up on the outside, King Towner third. By the 8 marker, Cadillac moves up fourth. Forest Hanover fifth, on the road again sixth in the backside. First time. Then comes Holmes Hanover going up on the outside. Lestra's Big Guy and the trailer Menard Maple Leaf in the backstretch. Greener Pastures and surging up on the outside. King Towner's on the move for Ben Webster. The opening quarter 27-4. Far turn. King Towner and Ben Webster doing battle. King Towner goes off stride. Greener Pastures with the lead. Carves it out. Here comes on the road again on the outside for Buddy Gilmore. On the rail, Betrayal. On the move on the outside, Manhart Maple Leaf. Now third as they pass the stands. They're out and on the move. Going for it. Outside, Manhart Maple Leaf inching up with the cover fifth. Then comes Cadillac on the rail. Forest Hanover and trailing outside Holmes Hanover. Way back is King Town of the half was 56-4. They pace the club turn. And now on top. On the road again. On the road again in Buddy Gilmore by a length. On the outside, Lestra's Big Guy. On the rail, Greener Pastures third. Inching up Manhart Maple Leaf. He's poised to go 3 wide and fourth as they drive for 3/4. Then comes Betrayal, Cadillac, Holmes, Hanover, Forest, Hanover, and way back King Towner. On the road again, they're 3 wide to get at him. 3/4, 1:26-2. On the road again by a length. Greener Pastures second. Up on the outside, Manhart Maple Leaf. On the rail, Lestra's Big Guy. Driving on the outside, Cadillac fifth. Here comes Holmes Hanover in sixth. Betrayal on the rail, Forest Hanover, and way back King Towner. Cup 8's on the line. The assault on the world record. On the inside, on the road again by 2, and he's drawn away from Greener Pastures. Holmes Hanover closing third. It's going to be on the road again. 1:56-1. A new track record.
And boy, we've come a long way in the speed department. 56-1 at the time was a track record, Kenny. And getting a look at the KG Buddy Gilmore there, he was looking over the right shoulder at 3/4. So I think the result was never really in doubt. What I remember about On the Road again, not here on Confederation Cup Day per se, but those old races of him at the Meadowlands making 3 and 4 moves in the race, and with great horses like Guts taking a run at him late and him holding them off.
One of the greatest chestnut pacers ever. He did it all, and it didn't matter what size track. Like you said, he overcame a rugged trip there to win. He was parked almost to the half before he cleared to the front. He was well within himself to win. But like you said, he did the same thing on the big track. So no matter what they threw at him, yeah, he was a true warrior.
And Ken, that was your third Confederation Cup call at that point in time. Talk about the excitement of those big days, and I'm sure you feed off the energy of the crowd on a day like that.
Yeah, the racing season, really, it's kind of like the Hambletonian and the Meadowlands Pace, and I think a lot of tracks that have a major race, your whole season kind of builds to that one point. So the excitement is palpable. You can't wait until Confederation Cup, comes. Not that the other races don't mean anything, but and it was in August, in late August. So let's go, let's get this thing going, and the buildup was huge. huge. Also, I mentioned that we were live on TSN. We got a lot of good coverage, national television coverage, but the local coverage was great too. We actually had a press conference, and we had radio stations and newspaper people and so on, sports writers and television stations interviewing drivers and trainers and so on. We had a press conference. It was exciting. There was quite a build-up to the race, and we were fortunate in that we had, for the most part, for most of our Confederation Cup that I can remember, the weather cooperated too. So, and on that day, it certainly did. And on the road again, went on to, well, of course, he was a Hall of Famer, and went on to be a $70 million sire, and sired some pretty good horses like Delinquent Account and so on. And unfortunately, we lost Buddy Gilmore, I believe, a few years back, but. And there's evidence again of a great horse, great driver, and it was they were there for our signature event, and it put Flamborough Downs on the map year in and year out.
Yeah, on the road again. What a resume, right? 44 for 61 lifetime, and he earned $2.8 million, and for that time, an incredible number. He was a winning machine, and yeah, it was great to see him there. So that's 1984. Let's fast forward 3 years, Ken, and another great champion makes his way to Flamborough Downs, Jate LaBelle. Compare, the hype around him coming in to the year on the road again that came. Was it similar?
Yeah, because Jate was already a champion 2-year-old, I believe, and he was undefeated as a 2-year-old. But there were 3 elimination heats, nevertheless, that day. Top 3 coming back for $151,000 final. The first heat going to Marvel, a Sun Sam colt with Buddy Gilmore for John Grant of Hornby, Ontario. He was one of the favorites, coming off a stakes win at the Syracuse Mile. The second heat, Jate LaBelle, Mark O'Mara, son of No Nukes, with his 11th win in 16 starts in $1 million season for owner Joe McCluskey of Battle Creek, Michigan. Jate LaBelle was an undefeated freshman in '86. He went 15 for 15. And then the third heat, and we'll see him in the final here, Stage Door Stevie. Vero Bowman drove the son of Merger for trainer George Hale and owner George Halpin of Pompano Beach, Florida. Stage Door Stevie going in, after that win, he was 26 for 33 lifetime. So he was a winning machine, and you're going to see a real game effort out of him. But Jate the Great roughed up a bit early in the early going in front of a record crowd of almost 8,000 people, got a breather, and then he just spit on them.
And Kenny, maybe get your thoughts. Again, this is 1987. And we remember the great matchup from earlier that season, Jate LaBelle, Frugal Gourmet in the North America Cup. So I'm sure that 8,000, many of that 8,000 were excited to be there that afternoon to watch Jate.
Yeah, they were, because the Connectors, I think, had gone on the record saying, you know what, we're going to smash the track record. And as you can see at the end of the mile, Mark O'Mara's demeanor in the bike indicated he knew he had a big chance at it, so he went after it. I don't know, was he wanted some revenge or to get that horse back in the spotlight, because he'd won the North America Cup, but then he got hammered in the Meadowlands Pace, and he got beat in the Prix d'Été. So the Confederation Cup meant something, and it was a statement race.
All right, let's take a look at it now. This is back in 1987.
It's Jate the Great. He won his heat easily. Jate's in control where he likes it on top. Simcoe Hanover right there under his stud hold, a half 57 and 3. That second quarter 30 and 2, and now Stage Door Stevie's back at it. As they race that club turn, Marvel takes out with him and grabs the cover 4th. A gap of 2 now to Lowbrow Quest in 5th. Moving up, Calm Season 6th. Merrily We Roll Along is 7th. Racing out of that turn, Sherwood Aid and Rumpus Hanover the backstretch. It's a battleground. Jate LaBelle by a length. Stage Door Stevie. Jate LaBelle gives him the cold shoulder. Simcoe Hanover moves up on the inside. Second 3 quarters. 1:26 and 3 now. Watch him take off. The burners, the afterburners are on. Jate LaBelle by 4. Another world champion on the inside. Simcoe Hanover, and Mark's going for it all with this colt. He's turning him loose now. Jate LaBelle by 5. Simcoe Hanover is now on the inside second. It's all Jate LaBelle, Cup 11 champion now. It's just a question how fast. Jate LaBelle surging to the finish. Jate LaBelle's home in 1:54 and 3, a new track record.
Yeah, so simply a showcase for Jate Lobel on this particular day. Ken, he went in, he was the big gun, there's no question, a lot of hype around him, but do you think he even exceeded what people had anticipated that day?
Well, in his heat, he was completely wrapped up. He was just toying with them. So it set him up for a perfect final. And despite the fact that Stage Door Stevie was so game and did apply some pressure, again he just gave him the cold shoulder, as you heard, and took off. He was really on his game that day. His best offspring was Riyadh. We remember him, 48-3, 2.76 million. And he signed a few millionaires as well: David's Pass, Gothic Dream, and Village Jasper. By the way, I just got a text that want to point out that Charlie Jurovinsky did get a piece of Matt Scooter, not on the road again. And Harry Polton, of course, trained both Matt Scooter and On the Road Again as well. So hats off to Harry Polton there. But Jake the Great electrifies a record crowd of 8,000 with that all-time Canadian mark and a half-mile track, en route to his second straight Dan Patch Award. He was indeed a great horse, and a great horse came to Flamborough Downs to win our signature event.
Who sent you the text?
A huge winning time. Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
It was my Uncle Harry trained both. It's just a number here. Hi, Ken, watching you on COSA. So,
okay. Yeah, because I
knew I had it mixed up.
Charlie did own part of On the Road Again. He purchased in later.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He might have come in. Okay. He came in later. All right. There you go.
And
good stuff.
Yeah, what a feather in the cap of Harry Polton. We're going to get to see his other Confed Cup winner, Matt Scooter, a little bit later in the show. But you think about that, Ken Middleton. He had the once-in-a-lifetime horse and On the Road Again. A few years later, he gets another one in Matt Scooter, and had some other nice ones like Stargaze Hanover in the lineup at that time as well.
Yeah, he really did. And the whole family at Flamborough Downs was in love with this Matt Scooter horse. He came to town. He had all the hype about him and stuff like that. And I think as we watch the replay of the final, you're going to see Ken Warkentin's good buddy Jack Gard. Watch him right at the finish line. He's standing in the winner's circle. He gives the big fist pump. I'll always remember that. It was funny.
Greg, Ken. I'm sorry. It was like a clash of the titans. And you got it. It was almost it was a bonus because you got to see them race against each other twice, and like getting two cups for the price of one. And Runnymede Lobel had gotten away from Matt in the first heat, and Matt Scooter's locked in last, and Mike LaChance has to make this big right turn to get around him around the velodrome turns there, and he comes flying late and finishes second. But in the final, of course, Matt gained his revenge. So.
Absolutely. So we're going to get to take a look at that a little bit later in the show. You guys mentioned it, the word family, and it truly felt like a family when you worked at Flamborough Downs, and obviously the patriarch of that was Charlie Jurovinsky. So we've got our next trivia question coming up next, and kind of on that theme. Flamborough Downs conceived in around 1972 and was built by the time 1975 rolled around. The early principals in Flamborough Downs, when it was built, included Charlie, his partner at the time, William McCann, and retired politician and horseman Ray Connell. What other prominent Canadian horse owner was involved in the initial group that built fabulous Flamborough Downs in the mid-70s? And again, leave your answers in our comments section. We're going to recap all the trivia questions later on tonight, and you'll see how you did there. Charlie Jurovinsky, yes, the man who had the dream and saw it to fruition with Flamborough Downs. We talked about the ownership group, the early ownership group of four. Charlie was involved from day one, and he would be the last one of that group involved with Flamborough Downs before selling it a number of years ago, and was inducted into the Brantford Hall of Fame a few years back as well. And we've got a nice feature here to look at, give you a bit more of the background behind a true giant in Canadian harness racing, Charlie Jurovinski. So let's take a look at that. We'll talk a little bit more about it in a few moments.
The only thing that grabs you at that time is to work to try to help your family and earn some money. School didn't matter, and of course, I chose to quit school, but I worked through the 15 to the 16, and then I was able to go out into industry, did various jobs in industry. I worked at the Dominion Glass, I worked at the Sovereign Potteries, I worked at the Westinghouse, kept trying things, and then gravitated to a construction company called Piggott Construction Company at that time.
From the mid to late 1950s, he worked in construction and then was co-founder of a Dundas-based construction company. After that venture closed, Charles and former Ontario PC Cabinet Minister Ray Connell opened the standard-bred racetrack Flamborough Downs in Dundas in 1975.
The most interesting person that I had ever dated, and ambitious, very ambitious. I knew he'd be a success in some fashion.
And I'll never forget, he had his trademark white shoes on, gray slacks with a crease so sharp I didn't dare touch the crease. I thought I might cut my finger. His traditional cigarette in hand, and he was busy staying on top of everything in his usual manner. And that was the first encounter I had with Charles Jurovinski.
Charlie's a flamboyant gentleman. I think he steps off the curb of flamboyancy and into audacious.
Charles is someone who devotes himself to the task at hand. And at the risk of playing to the audience here, Charles is an athlete. He works very, very hard at what he does.
Got to know Charlie quite quickly when we were racing in the Confederation Cup. I remember one year I was racing in it, and after the first elimination, he came down and he told the drivers, he said, listen guys, you're not going fast enough with these horses. You got to go a little bit faster so the public is going to enjoy these races a little bit more for the final. And I kind of caught on to who Charlie was right then and there.
And Charles, with one of the original partners, Ray Connell, wanted to do something innovative for both the fans and the horse people. And the first thing that comes to mind is the bank turns.
And it would help the horses going around a track, castigated for that, dead wrong. Nobody's going to race on the track, etc. Well, we did.
Charles wanted to implement was the passing lane.
Nobody ever heard of a passing lane, and our horsemen said, we won't race there, etc. And they fought me and so forth, and I said, hey, if you don't want to race, you don't want to race. I'm going to put it in, and you don't have to use it. Well, I'll tell you, once they discovered the passing lane, and anybody that goes to the harness races today, the first time a guy ducked in and was able to get into the passing lane, win the race, everybody goes for a passing lane.
And we wanted to have a race that had a Canadian flavor, a Canadian name to it, that would become a tradition over the years. And we decided that the Confederation Cup for 3-year-old pacers would be the best way to go.
Which was a new creation in order to promote Flamborough Downs across the broader racing community, and has been very successful.
And he constantly proved his critics wrong. Longevity. I mean, to have a business running 30 years in this day and age, you know, it's almost unheard of.
He managed this very successful facility for almost 3 decades before selling it in 2003. Charles, as an owner, was connected with many outstanding horses, including Hall of Famers Matt's Scooter and the great mare Elimony.
And one of the most exciting things was watching the horse that we owned win $1 million races. Like, who'd have ever dreamt?
Following his retirement, Charles and his wife Margaret have made considerable endowments to the City of Hamilton and McMaster University, permitting the establishment of a new state-of-the-art cancer care facility at the former Henderson General Hospital, now the Jurovinski Hospital and Cancer Center.
I had the personal misfortune of my wife passing 2.5 years ago, and Charlie's hospital commitment made her last month special. And I'll appreciate Charlie for horse racing forever, but I'll remember him beyond that for what he did for me.
Charles and Margaret are extremely passionate about their people-oriented help charities.
So our community, even today with the generosity that he and Margaret have shown to our community, just shows us all that there are certain values we can all ascribe, and he walks the walk.
The name Juravinski, it's on a hospital, but it's, you know, it's imprinted on horse racing statue somewhere that hasn't been built.
A much-deserved member of the Hamilton Sports Hall of Fame, class of 2017, Charles Juravinski.
So yes, a true giant in Canadian harness racing, no question about it. Charlie Juravinski. There will never be another Charlie in this industry, and yeah, it's just been a pleasure to get to know him over the years. And it's incredible, guys, what he's done. I mean, he's given almost $50 million to this point in time to help research, cancer research with the Juravinski Center and the Hamilton Health Sciences Center. And then pledged recently $100 million endowment. So basically their estate will go to continue that research in the coming years. Guys, maybe just again, another thought on, you know, getting to know Charlie and the time you get to spend with him over the years. Ken, we'll start with you.
Well, he was very, very supportive of me. That's one of the things I'm going to remember. He was always, you know, he was quick to give you a pat on the back. He never called me out on something, or rarely got angry at me or anything like that. He was always very kind and supportive. And you know, when I think of Charlie, I think of all the funny incidents and stories. One of them was he had a very top Ontario Sire Stakes performer. I think her name was Georgina Sealster, perhaps. You know, forgive me, it's been a while. Okay, I got the nod. So he vowed if the horse won the race on this particular night, which was very rainy and sloppy, he was going to roll around on the track. He was going to roll in the mud. So he of course was in his fine Sunday duds, but he changed into some crappy clothes and took off his white shoes. The horse won, sure enough. I believe it was Dr. John Hayes too. And he, you know, all of a sudden I had forgotten what his promise was. And I heard this kind of like roar and laughter from the crowd, people outside. And there he was rolling around on the track and covered in mud and so on. And that's just kind of the kind of guy he was, you know. And he came to the Meadowlands several times. Elamoni raced at the Meadowlands, and she got into some traffic issues the week before a race. I forget what the race was. Ron Waples got trapped in with her or whatever, and I had a chance to interview Charlie live on the closed circuit TV there at the Meadowlands. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he came up with a lot of famous sayings and phrases. And he says, "Ken, let's put it this way: if Ron Waples was the pilot and we were in an airplane, we'd all be dead." So he just came up with some real good zingers. But again, back to my original statement, he was very, very supportive. And I think in an offhanded way, I think he's you know, back in 2011 when I joined Ken Middleton to do that Confederation Cup, he was there that night, and Ken might remember that. And the first thing he did was his eyes lit up and he came over and gave me a big hug, and he wouldn't let go. and I got a chance to interview him that night. And it was just like old times. It was like a time machine. It was like a time warp. It was you know, it's one of those cool moments that you experience in racing, you know, and you never forget.
Yeah, Kenny, yeah, I've had the same experience being at Flamborough. You'd go back to do a race like the Confederation Cup, and when he was there, really one of the highlights of the night, right? To just get the chance to run into Charlie and reminisce with him for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, 100%. As you guys can both attest to, life gets busy and we forget to reach out to people that mean a lot to us or have meant a lot to us in the past in our lives and in our careers. And aside from my father, one of my biggest cheerleaders was Charlie Jervinsky, like you guys touched on. I think he felt a great sense of pride in seeing us be successful and being part of, the leadership in the game and the roles that we play. He's an inspirational guy, and he's also a role model in the sense that he started from humble beginnings. He was a guy who picked up turnips out of a farmer's field in Saskatchewan as a kid. He worked hard for every single nickel he got. And then when he got all those nickels, he gave them away to great causes, hospitals and, building a magnificent facility that gave Ken Warkentin, Ken Middleton, Ken Hornick, and a host of others great opportunities and springboard us to bigger things in our careers and stuff like that. Not to mention horsemen, drivers, trainers, grooms, breeders, and all the employees at the racetrack opportunities. And that's what the game's all about. So I'm going to phone Charlie tomorrow now. I'm starting to get here a little bit sentimental, but he's a guy who really, really means a lot to me in my life. When I think about it, when I sit here and reminisce about it, he's done a lot of great things for Ken Middleton.
Yeah, and you're just one of many, right, Kenny? Like, it's
Exactly.
incredible the lives he's touched, and especially with the work he's done with the Juravinsky Cancer Center. Just an amazing man. And it's great to get a chance to look back at him and everything he's meant to the game, and especially Flamborough Downs over the years. On this Confederation Cup edition of COSA TV, again, we want to welcome Kenny Middleton and Ken Warkentin with us tonight. So let's talk about the horse that he was associated with, one of the many greats, but Matt Scooter gave Charlie a victory in his signature race, the Confederation Cup, back in 1988. So again, Ken Warkentin, maybe compare Matt Scooter and the excitement level when he came in, trying to continue the legacy of greats like On the Road Again and Abercrombie and Jate LaBelle and all the ones that came before him. Yeah,
he was a long stride. He had a very distinctive, that's one thing I remember about Matt Scooter, the long distinctive stride of his, just a pure athletic motion. And the first thing, I still remember thinking he's not going to get around the half-mile track. He's not going to be able to handle the track. I think Runnymede Lobel might have a little more quick speed, a little more handy, and might get the jump on him. And, the elimination, he just got trapped in, had some road trouble, came flying late with that, long stride of his, and Mike LaChance wailing away. And then, but in the final, he was able to assert himself and show his superiority. And of course, he went on to become, the fastest horse in history with the time trial as well. So, he was another great horse. But this was, like I had said previous to this, is it was like two cups in one. You got to see them clash. I was glad when I saw the draw come out and they were able to, hook up and race twice in the same day. Two for the price of one.
Okay, let's turn back the clock. This is from 1988. The great Matt Scooter winning his Confederation Cup.
And they're off. Runnymede Lobel goes right to the front for Yves Filion. BJ Scoot leaves alongside. Matt Scooter racing third. He'll go to the wood as they move into the first turn. Bayes fella got away fourth, almost in post position order. In that first turn, Armbro Grab sweeps up fifth on the outside. The Honorable is racing sixth. As they move off the turn, then it's Keystone Raider in seventh spot. The trailer is Big Brother Henna. And there's Matt Scooter and Michel Lachance making a quick move on the outside to try for the lead. Runnymede and Matt Scooter together at the quarter in 28-1. Matt Scooter taking over. Runnymede Lobel, let's see if he lets him go by. He's parking him out a bit. 2 lengths to BJ Scooter in third. We've got a clash of the Titans on top already. Matt Scooter, Runnymede Lobel says no way, and he's going to park him out and they'll battle. 2 lengths to BJ Scooter as they come by the grandstand. Matt Scooter back in behind. BJ Scooter's third, Bayes fella fourth, Armbro Grab, the Honorable, Keystone Raider, and the trailer is Big Brother Henna to half. 50 56-1. They're moving into the club turn. It's Runnymede Lobel, Matt Scooter second, BJ Scooter's third, base fella fourth. Armbro Grant moving up on the rail. Keystone Raider on the outside sixth, 3/8 out. Then it's the Honorable and the trailer Big Brother Hannah. Runnymede Lobel looks awesome. Matt Scooter's gonna try it again. Michelle Lachance says let's go. BJ Scoot, base fella fourth. Armbro Grant, Big Brother Hannah, the Honorable and Big Brother Hannah, 3/4, 1:25-4. Runnymede Lobel right there on the outside. Matt Scooter going to try him again. Down on the inside, Bays Fellas third. Watch for BJ Scoot and Doug Brown. Here comes BJ Scoot looking good. Top of the stretch, Cup 12's on the line. Here is Matt Scooter. Runnymede Lobel, Matt Scooter has it. BJ Scoot closing with Bays Fella. It's going to be Matt Scooter. Matt Scooter and Michelle Lachance at the wire in 1:55.
Yeah, Matt showing his dominance on this day. They tried to beat him, Runnymede Lobel, the aggressor on the day. But, when you think back at that crop, Ken Warkentin, BJ Scoot, I believe won the Little Brown Jug that year later in the season. And you've also got Bays Fella, who would go on to be a Breeders' Crown champion. So that was a pretty deep crop. But Matt, at times, made it look easy.
Yeah, and that was what was great about that fact that we had such a great crop that year, and it was a great race. But I repeat, the two great horses clashed there, and they really, they raced those horses pretty tough, and that's twice a day, heats in the same day on a half-mile track, just like the Little Brown Jug. You had some great drivers there too, and of course you had Hall of Famer Mike Lachance, who turns, I believe he turns 70 later this year. So again, the race itself attracted the top 3-year-olds in the sport, and the top drivers and top trainers year in and year out. And this year, of course, was no exception, with Matt Scooter going on to an illustrious career as an older horse as well.
Kenny, assuming you were there in person that day, what was it like to watch Matt Scooter, watching him in person? That's one of the horses I regret that I never did get to see live. And Ken mentioned the gait, the unique gait, the reach. He had that charisma out on the racetrack. What was it like to watch him live?
We didn't get a chance to see it, but YouTube, I'm sure, has got it. Go back and watch the elimination. Ken talked about Charles Dravinsky saying if Ron Waples was the pilot, we'd all be dead. I'm sure he said the same about Mike Lachance in the elimination that day of Matt Scooter. But we'll go back and watch that elimination. He was just flying. Yeah, he could reach for racetrack like a trotter. Like, he just had that high action out front. He gobbled up a lot of racetrack when he made his stride, and he was a fun horse to watch. Whether it was a half-mile track or big tracks, it's just a raw speed horse, and a horse who's obviously he's gone on to be instrumental in the breeding game too. You see a lot of that Matt Scooter line trickle down, and he passes on a lot of great characteristics.
So Matt Scooter, a great champion, a winner of just shy of $3 million in his career. So as you can see, there's a bit of a theme to tonight's show, and that's how many world champion performers were able to grace Flamborough Downs over the years and win the Confederation Cup. So that brings us back to our poll question. Let's recap that and give you some more time to have your say in our poll question tonight. Which of these horses, not necessarily which horse was the most impressive or the greatest winner of the event, but which horse drew the most attention when they came to Flamborough Downs in their year of the Confederation Cup? Was it Jade Lobel, Some Beach Somewhere, Cam Fella, or Matt Scooter? And leave your answers for us, and we will recap and check out the results at the end of the show. We've got some more trivia to pass along in a few moments as well. But right now, time for a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more of this Confederation Cup edition of COSA TV. make sure to check out the App Store and download your version of Off and Pacing. And thank you to Ryan Clements and FarmGames.com for putting together our first ever edition of the virtual Confederation Cup. And we picked what we thought were the 8 greatest past winners of this marquee event. And we put them into the simulator, and Ryan Clements and his team did the work. So we're going to get a look at this in a moment, guys. But maybe just get your thoughts individually. Ken, we'll start with you. I mean, dreaming about seeing a field like this assemble in person, hypothetically, of course, but I mean, how incredible would it be to see these 8 line up behind the gate against each other?
Absolutely terrific. I'd like to see the past performances too at the time. You had Cam Fella, the ultimate grinder, Art Major, Matt Scooter with that long stride, his Some Beach Somewhere, who could handle his any size track, didn't really matter. He brought his track with him. On the road again with Post 8 and Jake Lobel on the outside with him. I think that's going to make it tough there. And again, I think Cam Fella's going to have to grind into it, but we'll see.
And Ken Middleton, what about you? Do you have an early pick for us before we watch the simulation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Some Beach Somewhere, for sure, right? He turned in one of the most dazzling 2-heat performances ever. A lot of great memorable performances, though. You know, Matt Scooter, Cam Fell obviously didn't go the high speed, but he was the buzz horse. American Ideal, probably one of the most dazzling moves you're ever going to see a horse make on a half-mile track. Mark McDonald had him on cover, flipped him 3 wide going into the clubhouse turn. He paced 3 wide, and he went around them like they were standing still. That, to me, was one of the most breathtaking moves next to Hardy Hanover's 3 wide brush in the backstretch in the Fan Hanover when she raced at Woodbine years ago. But so many great Confederation Cup horses and moments.
Okay, without further ado, let's have a look at our virtual Confederation Cup. Again, Gary Guy not able to be with us tonight, but we thank him for providing the race call to this simulated race. There's a look at the field once again in post position order. And here is Gary with the call of the virtual Confederation Cup.
The field for the all-time Confederation Cup in front of a packed house here at Flamborough Downs is nearing the start. And they're at the start on the rough, and Art Major on the inside. Art Major grabs the early lead. Matt Scooter now is going to slide into the pocket. Some Beach Somewhere is caught on the outside and is racing third. American Ideal now on the inside fourth, about 4 lengths off lead. Then it's a gap of a couple of lengths and back to Abercrombie. And then it is Cam Fella. On the road again is wide, and on the inside, Jake Lobel. They race on to the opening quarter. Some Beach Somewhere now is looking to sweep up and clear to the front and is able to do so just as they get to the quarter in 27-2. Now it is Art Major filling the pocket. Matt Scooter's on the inside, racing third. In front of American Ideal and Cam Fella surging on the outside. First up, fifth now. Then it is back to Abercrombie and Jake Lobel. And on the road again, trailing the field as they come off the turn. And they head towards the half. Some Beach Somewhere and Paul McDonnell setting the pace in the all-time cup. Here comes Cam Fella now. Coming to call first up is only about a length off the lead. And Art Major is on the inside filling the pocket. The half was 55-2. Matt Scooter is racing fourth in American Ideal. His fifth on the inside. Then racing sixth is Matt Scooter. And then it is Jake Lobel, and on the road again it is still Some Beach Somewhere. The beach leads by about 3/4 of a length. Cam Fella is grinding hard and getting a little closer. On the inside third is Art Major, and Matt Scooter is racing fourth. They hustle on to 3/4, and now Jake Lobel is kicking into gear and is taken over fourth. Matt Scooter is racing fifth, and then it is on the road again in American Ideal. And Abercrombie trails the field. Cam Fella is taking the lead at 3/4 in 1:22-3. But now Some Beach Somewhere is fought back on the inside and reclaim the front. They turn on down the stretch drive in the all-time Confederation Cup. Some Beach Somewhere. Here comes Cam Fella again. Cam Fella is right alongside Some Beach Somewhere. Some Beach Somewhere. Cam Fella. Some Beach Somewhere turns back Cam Fella. Matt Scooter was third. Jake Lobel was fourth. Mile time 1:49-1. Some Beach Somewhere wins the all-time Confederation Cup.
And there he is, some beat somewhere. He wins in the virtual simulated race tonight. Again, a big thank you to Ryan Clements and his team for putting that together for us. That was a lot of fun. Guys, we'll bring you back in. First of all, I didn't know we bumped the purse up to $1 million for the Cup. That's great news. But I guess it's virtual money, right, Ken?
That came from Charlie, I think. One of his endowments. Yeah, absolutely. But Matt Scooter got locked in again, right?
He did. And Kenny, you called it, some beat somewhere. How about the trip Cam Fellow went?
Yeah, heck of a trip. Pat Crow tripped him out. It was great to see some beach somewhere raced against his grandfather, Matt Scooter, in there. That's the influence he had on the game, and that's what was cool about it too. You could put together pieces of the puzzle. You know, Matt Scooter went on to sire Mach 3, of course, the sire Some Beach Somewhere, and it was cool to see the progression from year to year and the influence that so many Confederation Cup winning horses had down the road with their sons competing in it and winning it.
Yeah, very cool tonight too to watch. We're watching races from more than 40 years ago, you know, of not the greatest quality. And here on the same show tonight, we're communicating remotely, and we're watching a virtual simulation of a race. So it's pretty incredible how things have come in the last 40, 50 years. We now want to move on and have a look at Ken Warkentin's final Confederation Cup from 1989. And Mystery Fund was the horse that won that night. Set the scene.
Yeah, 2 elimination heats this Sunday, August the 6th of 89. Top 4 came back for over $300,000. The first heat going to Be Crafty, an upset winner, $32.40. Mark Crow drove him for a son of Tyler B, for his father, Pat Crow, Cam Fellow fame. Second heat going to Mystery Fund and Top Notcher in a dead heat for win over Dancing Master and Wilco's General. Also going in 156 and 4. Bill Gale drove the colt by Fundamentalist for trainer Bob McIntosh and the iconic owner-breeder George Siegel. Mystery Fund, the sharpest horse coming in, with that win in his elimination, made it 7 consecutive victories. Doug Brown drove Top Notcher, the son of Abercrombie, trained by Renee Larman. So from the rail out in the final, it's Mystery Fund, Be Crafty, Top Notcher, Trillatown, Pilgrim's Patriot, Dancing Master, Dancing Puddles. That made it a nightmare, but they were really not contenders. And Wilco's General, there was a Ken Sieber and a Bill Robinson entry in the race. And you'll see a Mystery Fund prevailing over Pilgrim's Patriot and Dancing Master to win his 8th in a row here.
All right, here it is from back in 1989.
They'll have to come after Mystery Fun. Be Crafty, first up now to do the work. 3/8 out. Right there on the inside, Pilgrim's Patriot hemmed in out. Top Notcher smartly grabs cover. He's poised and he goes 3 wide. Top Notcher's wheeling in the backstretch for Brownie. Trillatown joins the chase in 5th. The field tightens up. Then it's Dancing Master, Wilco's General, Dancing Puddles. 3/4, 1:27. A 29-3 third quarter. Mystery Fund, they're trying to get to him on the inside. Moving up second, Pilgrim's Patriot, Be Crafty. Mystery Fund, Pilgrim's Patriot, fresh off the wood for Wall. Dancing Master's moving up third. Cup 13 on the line. Mystery Fund digs in. It's Mystery Fund trying to get to him. Pilgrim's Patriot, he can't do it. Dancing Master third. Mystery Fund, the mystery's over.
Arguably the
56 and 3 that year back in 1989. Billy Gale in the driver's seat, the late Billy Gale. Ken Middleton, maybe just a thought on him as a driver. You would have got to watch him up close and personal over the years. He was one of my favorites. I thought he was just a great reinsman.
Yeah, he sure was. A great colt guy. I think, being associated with Bob McIntosh, they went hand in hand for so many years. Of course, a Bob McIntosh trainee there, a star of the Ontario Sire Stakes, who dabbled in the Grand Circuit and obviously was peaked for that particular race there. So, Bill Gale had a long and great career in racing, a Hall of Famer, like you said, who is no longer with us. But, a great pilot from yesteryear.
And Ken, that was your final Confederation Cup race call. How long after that, when you left for a new opportunity, and what were the circumstances behind making the move?
Well, it was the following January, I believe. So it was later, it was early in the following year, 1990. I got a phone call just out of the blue from a fellow we all know, Jerry Connors, who I believe is in Pennsylvania now. Jerry Connors, a Hall of Famer, who was a publicity director at Northfield Park at the time, said he was leaving. And we had the odd conversation here and there. He said, send your resume, your tape, you never know. Well, I didn't have to send a tape because the job did not entail announcing. It was just publicity director. So I ended up going down there, interviewing for the job, and I remember flying back thinking, there ain't no way I'm moving to Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not moving here. I just, I'm not taking the job. And I was convinced by a few colleagues that I should take the opportunity, and I did eventually. It took a little while to work out the immigration and so on, but it was a great move. And I ended up calling a lot of races when I was there, and I learned a lot. And it was a great experience. I was there for about a year, and then by total fluke and by total, this is what happens. Tom Durkin was leaving the Meadowlands to go to Naira, and I'm sitting in my apartment one night, and I got a phone call from John Bothy, who said, would you like to come down and work here for a couple of days and audition? And, the rest is history. I wasn't the first choice, but nevertheless, I got the job. So
what's that like
ago.
You get a call to go to the Meadowlands, the Mecca, to audition? I mean, that had to be quite a thrill and probably a little stressful at the same time.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I remember thinking, there's no way I'm going to have, I've got no shot, but I remember the secretary does the longtime secretary that worked at Joyce Molzon. She liked me and kept, she says, I like this guy. I still remember there was a gigantic box of tapes from, guys that wanted the job. And they did not pick me first. They picked I believe they picked a fellow by the name of Kevin Gomer, who worked at River Downs at the time, because he had some thoroughbred experience as well, and some television experience as well, and was their candidate or leading candidate at the time. But somehow, it went well. The audition went well, and I still remember the third night I was there. I was supposed to call a bunch of races, and the races were canceled due to fog. So sometimes it just works out that way. I think I called one or two and then had to tell people to go home because the races were canceled because there was fog that night. But, it all worked out. I had to go back to Ontario and wait out the immigration thing, and that was a couple of months, and I was getting a little tense at the time. I didn't think I was going to end up, I was going to make it, but I did. So that was a long time ago. It's pretty exciting.
All worked out. Yeah, it's really worked out.
Yeah, it's kind of Twilight Zone stuff.
You. Absolutely. So Ken Middleton, by the mid-90s, you were the voice of Flamborough Downs, and we're going to go to 1995 next, and we thought it was fitting to look at a win from driver Paul McDonnell, the winningest driver in Confederation Cup history with 5 championships under his belt, and this was the first of those. How long had you been calling at Flamborough at the time when 1995 rolled around?
I started in 94, the fall of 94, so I did call the Confederation Cup that year. So that would have been my second Confederation Cup.
And just your recollections of the crop that year, and Village Connection had, I know, an outside post that night. What were the expectations of him going into the race?
Yeah, they were very high. He ended up going on to race in the Little Brown Jug. He was a great handy horse. Half-mile track probably suited him better. I think it stepped him up as opposed to a big track, one of those types of horses. So, yeah, a hometown horse, local connections. As you said, Paul McDonnell would go on to have Confederation Cup greatness splattered all over his soon-to-be Hall of Fame resume. And, of course, the late, great Bill Wildwood, too, one of the great horsemen, not just because of what he was able to accomplish himself, but he went on to be a great teacher for so many great horsemen that are still in the game. A guy like Ben Wallace, who's also going to be put in the Hall of Fame this summer, comes to mind. So yeah, it was a deep,
Let's listen to Ken
crop.
Middleton. Let's listen to Kenny from 1995 in his early days at Flamborough Downs. This is Village Connection winning that year's edition of the Confederation Cup.
For Brian Sears, 8 is Strong Clan and Doug Brown. In the second tier 9, it's Dynamite and Mike Ford. 19th edition of the Confederation Cup. They're often pacing quick off the gate here tonight. McDonnell taking no chances, sending Village Connection rapidly out for the front. On the inside, second to go with him early is Cam's Catch. Collector's Piece gathered up to race in third. Up on the outside, fourth. Strong Clan also left smartly for Brown. In between horses now to gather up and race from in fifth. That one is Abatom. Sixth one down towards the rail as they head towards that opening quarter. That one down along the rail is Dynamite. The back three trailers early on in this one tonight are iCarl's Rum and Coke. Further back along on the inside as they pace towards that opening quarter, Orchard Street and the trailer Mad on the Rocks. Opening panel 26 and 3. They carved out a big one, biggest of the 1995 season here at Flamborough. And leading the way, that one was Village Connection. He wins round one for Paul McDonnell. This one's far from over, though. Village Connection leads it. The pocket in second tonight. That one at the rail is Cam's Catch. A parked out journey here tonight for Strong Clan. Doug Brown is going to try and keep him alive. First up, half was reached in a grueling 55 and 3. Still going strong. 29 seconds. They went the second panel. Paul McDonnell leads it here by a length. The pocket in second, Cam's Catch. He's locked up tight at this point. Strong Clan on the outside is third. Right there, fourth on the rail is Collector's Piece. Second out from in five, Abatom. 6-1 back is Dynamite. iCarl's Rum and Coke is seventh on the outside. Trapped in the rail in eighth as they roll to three quarters, Orchard Street. And Mad on the Rocks is ninth. Third marker, 1:24 and 3, and it's Village Connection still on that lead. Cam's Catch is right there in second. Expect these two to sprint away in this final quarter. They're going to slug it out in Cup 19. McDonnell and Village Connection leading it. Cam's Catch. Lachance has him right on the helmet. He's going to be tugging on the right line right about now. And here comes Cam's Catch, taking on Village Connection in the final eighth. Village Connection has something left. Here comes Safdie. Collector's Piece is flying up the Flamborough passing lane, but Cup 19 goes to Village Connection and Paul McDonnell in 1:54 flat.
And what do you think now when you listen back to how you sounded then versus how you sound now? Yeah, sure. And, a few more years there and then a great stepping stone, and it really had you prepared to make the move just a little bit down the highway to Woodbine and Mohawk at the time. And tell us about, when that move there transpired and again, similar to Ken at the Meadowlands, it had to be a big thrill for you to know you're moving on to the biggest racing organization in Canada.
Warnick was influential. He gave me the call that they were likely going to need a trackside winner's circle reporter for the North America Cup that year. Karen Houdon was doing it in the past, and she was racing a good filly that year named Remarkable Image. The story was she was going to race at Barrie in the eliminations of the OSS the night of the eliminations of the Cup, and so I worked. And if her filly advanced to the final, I got to work a second week in the night of the final, and as it was, her filly won, so she was gone for 2 Saturdays. Ken Middleton got to work the winner's circle both nights. Long story short, I sent a thank you letter to David Naylor, who was the manager of the broadcast department at the time, said, I relished the opportunity to work there. I love the professionalism. I love working with everybody there. If a position ever became available, I would love to be a part of that team just because I got a taste of the great Grand Circuit racing, and it's the ultimate goal. If you're going to work at a racetrack in Canada, that's where you want to work. They've got the greatest horses, the greatest horsemen come there. I got a call about a month later saying a full-time position is available. Would you like it? And I said, yes, I would. And I took it. So
Perfect.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And you know, we're going back talking about Charlie, Richard Jacob, who was the GM at Flamborough at the time. I mean, I think they really you know, supported that, right? They felt good to see you know, their people go on, and you know, hate to lose you, obviously, but you know, really wished you nothing but the best, and that was great, and really Flamborough, the place to get that great foundation to go on to those opportunities. I want to ask you quickly before we move on, just a comment when it comes to a big race day and a big race event, the preparation that goes into that versus maybe a regular overnight. And you know, when you have the storylines perhaps in mind, Ken, and you're hoping they play out the way you envision they will, and you want to get prepared and do that moment justice. So kind of what goes into preparing for those big day events?
Well, there's a collection of, you kind of vacuum up all the articles that are written, and you know, you've got the background on the horses. I might go back and watch some of the, with the convenience of YouTube and the internet now, you can go back and watch some of the, you know, their previous stakes races or efforts and so on. But like the Hambletonian, is very similar to the Meadowlands Pace early in the week, or even prior to that. I have a separate binder, and I just keep the press kit in there. I keep all the notes in there, and all the background on the various the people that the stakes races are named after, and so on and so forth. A lot of it is in your head, but you know, you have to have it in front of you to, you know, because there's a lot going on. It's a busy day. There's a lot going on, a lot of distractions, and you can get easily distracted because you're a racing fan, and you know, you got to work. You have to actually pay attention and do your job, and I find that it's handy to have that reference material in front of me, you know, when I need it, and I know where it is, so like I said, I do a lot of preparation weeks and months before the actual big event, you know, happens. You know, Meadowlands Pace and Hambletonian. So.
Yeah. And Kenny, I assume it's a similar preparation process for you. And you know, you've got so many major stake races. The best of the best are at Mohawk all summer long. Or do you look back? Is there a particular race or two where you feel like you nailed it? You feel like you know, you were able to capture the moment and really hit it out of the ballpark?
The one race that always comes back is obviously the Sun Beach Somewhere North America Cup, and it's not what I said. It's the fact that that horse had star power that no other horse in our generation has had. So it was the fact that how many ever thousand screaming fans came out in the grandstand. The right horse made the quarter pole move to the front, and the right horse dominated right to the finish line. It was just a matter of staying out of the way and, you know, hitting the landing and just describing what you see in front of you, you know, making it feel like this is a special horse, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to see another one like this, in all likelihood, maybe in your lifetime. So, you know, get a good look at him. Here he is, you know, in all of his greatness. He's a special horse, and yeah, I think I did him justice that night. That's the best way I can put it, really.
Sure. I'll ask both of you this too. Have you had the situation where you thought a storyline was going to play out a certain way? You had yourself mentally prepared for that, and something totally different happens and it catches you off guard in a big race? Ken, maybe ask you that one first.
Well, yeah, that happens a lot. That happens a lot in a lot of races. But as far as major races go, yeah, you know, we've seen upsets all over the place, all over the map. And like Ken says, you kind of stay out of the way and just react to what you see. You can't preconceive anything. You know, I think it's going to go this way. It's going to go that way. It's almost like you're not thinking. You're just reacting to what you see. one of the, like in the Hamiltonian when Mike LaChance pulled a big upset with Blair Burgess's horse, and
Amigo Hall.
you know, Amigo Hall, yeah, of course, we just did that a couple of weeks ago. You know, that was something where I just got a feeling. I had a feeling about the horse, and when it happens, you know, and the race makes the race. It has to happen, and you have to be ready for it, and to capture that moment. And that was one moment where I was right. I thought the horse was going to be really good. And last year, you know, I took a bit of heat about Green Shoe not going by. I said drawing clear, and if I could take those two words back, I would probably say coming on, or charging hard, as Sam McKee used to say, because I really did at one point thought he was going to just blow by and draw clear and win the Hamiltonian. But that sometimes races like that teach you a lesson.
Sure. Kenny, just maybe to pick up on that, I guess what Ken's saying is be prepared for any eventuality in a horse race, and don't get kind of tunnel vision and focused on one or two scenarios.
Yeah, everybody does it different. You know, sometimes there is a lot of preparation leading up to a race. For me, what I like to be prepared with is just the records, the speed records themselves. Be cognizant of the track records, Canadian records, world records, and then just call the race. You know, if a horse is 1-9, yeah, everybody in the Brother is expecting him to win, but there's horses like Bay's Fellow that upset in Breeders' Crowns, and Village Jiffy, who upsets the Presidential Balls in Breeders' Crowns, and, you know, the Banker Halls that win big, significant races and stuff like that. So you have to be ready for everything. And I think as an announcer, the best way to do it is try not to have scripted lines and stuff like that made. Just call what's in front of you and try and be creative and try and be fluid and try and be, you know, as just as relative to what you're seeing in front of you and spit it out.
Spontaneous.
Absolutely. Exactly.
I was guilty of, you know, what Ken just mentioned. I was guilty of the earlier Hamiltonians. You know, someone took me aside and said, you know, just call the race. You know, I was finishing off the call with the things that I had already preconceived, and you know, it was getting to be a bit too much. And I think that you know, the stars are on the track, and I'm not trying to be the star. We're not trying to be the star. We're trying to draw attention to the stars. So that's the and the preparation is there. If the preparation is there and you mean well and you try to be spontaneous and just react to what you see, you never know what's going to come out. It's usually going to be good. It's usually, but sometimes it isn't. It's not exactly what you want. But over the years and as you get more reps, you're gonna cut the kinks and fill the gaps in and not say the things you don't want to say.
I think one of the greatest examples of that, if you could go back and look at it, was Frank Salive's call when Yankee Cruiser won the Pepsi North America Cup. Everybody in the industry was heartbroken over Brian Pinsky's passing that year, just, you know, weeks prior to the Pepsi North America Cup. So Frank obviously had that in the back of his mind, but by no stretch of the imagination did he have his delivery of what he said in that race scripted out. It was just something that came from his heart, and that horse didn't win by a big margin either. So he took a leap of faith right at the finish line and delivered maybe one of the most memorable race calls, from my recollection anyway, of watching a local horse race, or any horse race for that matter. And it was spot on. It was beautiful. And it was just off the cuff. It wasn't scripted at all.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to our final trivia question tonight. And speaking of Village Connection, who we saw a moment ago, his Confederation Cup win was part of a 5-race win streak in stakes finals that year. The other wins included the Cleveland Classic, the Simcoe, the Art Rooney, and what other major Canadian stakes event from back in 1995. Village Connection, his Confederation Cup win, one of 5 stakes finals consecutively that the horse won that year, including the Cleveland Classic, the Simcoe, and the Art Rooney. There was another major Canadian stakes event as part of that 5-race win streak. And if you know the answer, leave it in our comment section. Time for one final commercial break, and we'll be back with a little bit more of our Confederation Cup edition of COSA TV. Welcome back to COSA TV. Two of the best in the business joining me tonight, Ken Middleton and Ken Warkentin. Great to have them with us as we take a trip down memory lane and look back at the great Confederation Cup races from yesteryear. We had a look at 1995 moments ago. We're going to fast forward 10 years for our next replay. Ken talked about it a little bit earlier tonight, the electrifying move from American Ideal in 2005 in winning that year. Gary Guy, who is the current track announcer at Flamborough Downs, at this point in his career, he was behind the microphone at the Downs and calling the action here. So let's take a look back to American Ideal's win from 2005.
And then it's Astronomical racing third. Lincoln Park is positioned fourth. American Ideal is the fifth one as they race to the opening quarter. Then it's back to All Over the Place in Banner Yankee. Then Liz Mara. And then True Force making a break in stride. They went past the opening quarter in a lively 26 seconds flat. And John Campbell has sent Cam's Fool right to the lead. They race off the turn and they come on towards us. Racing on the inside second, Synchrosy Tam. On the outside, first over is Astronomical. Lincoln Park is inside for the American Ideal. Is right on the back of Astronomical, who moves up now to within a half length of the leader, Cam's Fool. 54-4 for the halftime. It is Cam's Fool who leads by half a length. On the outside, Astronomical. Right there on the inside, Synchrosy Tam. And now popping off cover quickly is American Ideal. A surge to the lead. It's American Ideal who opens up explosively and is forged to a lead of 4 and is showing a tremendous burst of speed as they race to 3/4. Now coming on to take over second is All Over the Place. On the outside, it's Liz Mara. And racing fourth now is Astronomical. Then it's back to Synchrosy Tam and Banner Yankee. Then it's Lincoln Park, and Cam's Fool is back to 8th, and True Force is 9th. 1:22-4 for 3/4. A tremendous pace set by American Ideal, who's putting forth a outstanding effort in Cup number 29. It is American Ideal against the clock. 1:51-1 is Art Major's time. Do we have it here? 1:50-3, a Flamborough Downs track record. And Confederation Cup number 29, American Ideal was very sharp. Finishing second was All Over the...
So tonight we have seen the evolution of speed. We saw Cam Fella earlier on the show winning in 58-1 in 1982, 150-3 in 2005, a record performance at the time. The richest payday of American Ideal's career. He banked $230,000 as his share in winning that day. And Mark McDonald, Kenny, in the midst of his O'Brien Award-winning form back in the mid-2000s with this guy. Is the move still as electrifying when you watch it today on video?
Oh, yeah, you bet it is. Yeah, you don't see that too much. Good horses go around good horses like they're standing still like that. And that just goes to show how cagey Mark was. Probably one of the greatest half-mile drivers in Canadian history that I can recall. Jody Jamieson, Trevor Henry, guys who fall into that same category. But Mark knew Flamborough like the back of his hand. He saw the 54-4 half. He saw Cam's Fool and Astronomical go at it. So he was loaded. He flipped off cover at the right time, and he looked like a brain surgeon going into the backstretch, didn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we had Casey on recently, and she said at the time she thought that Mark moved a little bit prematurely there, but he knew what he was doing for sure on that night.
That's why she trains and he drives.
There you go. Well said.
Yeah.
And the final replay we want to have a look at here is from 2008. We couldn't do the show tonight without looking at the greatest performance in the history of the Confederation Cup by what many feel might be the greatest pacer of all time, or he's certainly right up there. Ken Warkentin, let's talk about, before we look at the replay, when, being down in New Jersey, when Some Beach Somewhere really started getting on the radar south of the border. I'm sure he was turning heads in his 2-year-old campaign. Was the excitement as high in the United States for his 3-year-old campaign as it was here in Canada, do you think?
Absolutely. And I still remember his debut in the pace elimination the week before the pace. He was such a big powerhouse performer, and of course, unleashed on a mile track, he was just such an imposing figure. And I remember after the race, after the elimination, I remember sitting there for like 20 minutes staring off into the distance. And I had a post parade coming up, I had a phone call, and I said, I think I just saw the greatest horse ever, in my time anyway. And of course, he lost the following week in that world record with Artificial. And that might have been, that was his only loss. That might have been his greatest race. His greatest performance was his lone loss. I mean, Ron Pierce told Hollywood Hayden that he could not believe Artificial was still going forward past the 3 quarters. And again, it took a world record to beat Some Beach Somewhere that night. But the hype was still there, even though he lost. That he would run the table in Horse of the Year, and we all know the great history of his racing career and his siring career as well. So it was exciting to, like I said, I think he was the greatest horse I ever saw.
And that's saying something because, as we've seen tonight, Ken, you had the chance to call Cam Fulla, Jate Lobel, Matt Scooter. That is really royalty when it comes to harness racing. So for you to say that about Some Beach Somewhere speaks volumes. And Kenny, earlier you talked about Jate Lobel, the year he won, and Mark O'Mara maybe wanting to make a statement. Confederation Cup and probably every race after the Meadowlands pace, it seemed like the Beach was making a statement. That loss at the Meadowlands could have derailed him. And absolutely the opposite happened. And you were there when he hit Flamborough Downs that day, and you had to be there, didn't you, to really put it into perspective how impressive that performance was.
Yeah, you really did. It was unbelievable. He gave everybody and their brother that showed up that day their money's worth. I don't know if this was the case or not, but Brent McGrath and company took a lot of heat for not going to the Little Brown Jug. People said, he can't get around the half, or he's afraid of 2 heats. Yeah, sure he was. All they had to do was go to Flamborough that day, and he just absolutely buried them. Absolutely buried them with a it was a magical performance, for lack of a better words. And he put that rumor away in a hurry that he couldn't get around a half and he couldn't go 2 trips, because he sure did.
Yeah, it was a world record.
Yeah, and a 26-3 final quarter to cap it all off. Remarkable performance. Let's have another look at it. 2008, hard to believe, 12 years ago, Some Beach Somewhere.
Field for the Cup, gathering speed approaching the start. And they're off and pacing. Some Beach Somewhere is going to drive early. Also leaving Deuce Sealster. Santana Blue Chip gets away third. Tis a Masterpiece is on the inside as Some Beach Somewhere has been able to sprint out and make the early lead. Santana Blue Chip is filling the pocket. And going off stride is Tis a Masterpiece racing third. Deuce Sealster. Keystone Horatio comes away fourth. Then that's Shadow Play. Now in mid-pack racing fifth. The Mohican Pan is positioned sixth. Further back we go now to Anderlecht racing seventh. Then Then it's Liz Finney, and on the inside, 'tis a masterpiece. 26-1 the opening quarter. Some Beach Somewhere is able to work on the lead in the 32nd Confederation Cup and has an advantage of a length and a half. Santana Blue Chip rides the pocket. Deuce Sealster's to the inside. Keystone Horatio is the first up challenge here for Randy Waples. Moves to within about 3 of the lead. Shadow Play has the cover of Keystone Horatio and is racing second over. Comes on to take over for Deuce Sealster on the inside 5th. The Mohican Pan is 6th. Then it is back to Anderlecht to the outside, to the inside Liz Finney, and trailing 'tis a masterpiece 55-2 at the halftime. Some Beach Somewhere leads it by a length and a quarter. Keystone Horatio to the outside trying to chip away at that lead. Has it down to 3/4 on the inside 3rd. It is Santana Blue Chip. Then to the outside Shadow Play, a winner of his division in track record time. The inquiry sign is up in this dash. It'll be on the start of the race, and now rolled out 3 wide goes Shadow Play, but Some Beach Somewhere paces on. Santana Blue Chip is 2 lengths off the lead. Keystone Horatio is 3rd. Shadow Play is 4th. Then racing 5th now. That's the Mohican Pan. 3/4 a lively one, 22-4. They turn for home, and it is Some Beach Somewhere starting to pace away. Santana Blue Chip is 3 1/4 lengths back. Some Beach Somewhere with no urging. The Beach is going to win Cup 32 and win it by about 3.5. The time 1:49-2. That's a world record for a 3-year-old pacing colt on a half-mile track. Outstanding.
Outstanding indeed. 49-2. And it looks like he could go around for a 3rd time there on the run out. And the 5th win in this event for driver Paul McDonnell, part of his Hall of Fame career. Kenny, pretty much matched her simulation race from earlier, both in time and the end result.
Yeah, it really did. And just, you can't get sick of watching that horse, you know what I mean? Once in a lifetime. We talked about it. Our generation was very fortunate to see him so many times.
Absolutely. And yes, indeed. Hard to believe, though, 12 years has already gone by. That was one of the later years for the event, as it was still run for 3-year-old colt pacers. The last 5 editions have been as a 4-year-old open event, so it changed formats and now contested earlier in the season. This year, unfortunately, postponed because of the COVID-19. It will be moved to later in the year. But now a 4-year-old event, and it's attracted some excellent 4-year-olds in recent years, and it's turned out to be a pretty good, I think, remaking of the race as we look at it. And we've got a question on that theme coming up next. I think this one's for Kenny. J.D. Varnell, question for Mr. Middleton. Not sure if he can answer this specifically, but maybe has an opinion on it. Should Mohawk Woodbine have a race for 4-year-olds in order to create a triple crown to go along with the Confederation Cup and the Prix d'Été? What do you think, Kenny?
Should they? Why not? I guess we'd have to have a strictly 4-year-old, a race strictly made for 4-year-olds. We don't. The Canadian Pacing Derby is our biggest event. It's for the older horses, so anybody and their brother could race in it. So should they have it? Why not?
Yeah, interesting concept. Prix d'Été, Confederation Cup, really 2 of the major events now restricted to 4-year-olds in North America. So yeah, it would be interesting to have a little 3-race series that ended up at perhaps Mohawk Park to wrap it up. So thank you to JD for the question. And before we wrap up tonight, guys, we're going to recap our trivia questions and our poll question. I think we're going to begin with the poll question, and we'll see what people's opinions are on which of these 4 great champion horses, we'll review it in a moment, which of the 4 garnered the most interest or the most buzz when they came to Flamborough Downs for their Confederation Cup win. And we had quite a list to choose from. The great Jate Lobel, of course, Matt Scooter, Cam Fulla, and Some Beach Somewhere. And it was a runaway winner. Some Beach Somewhere, 73% thought that he drew the most attention with his Confederation Cup appearance back in 2008. Time to recap our trivia questions. And I was monitoring throughout the night as best I could, and it was interesting to see a lot of people coming up with the winning answer. So nice job. Here is a recap of the questions and the answers tonight. Who was Cam Fella's first $1 million performer? It was from his first crop, the Great Camtastic, a $2.1 million winner in his career. Question number 2. The principals in Flamborough Downs, when it was built, included Charlie Juravinski, his partner William McCann, and Ray Connell. What other prominent Canadian horse owner was involved? The answer was John Grant of Hornby. And our final trivia question. Village Connection's Confederation Cup win was part of an impressive 5-race win streak in stakes finals. We named 3 of the other ones and asked you to try and come up with the 5th, and it was the Nat Christie from Stampede Park. He went out west and took down the Nat Christie Memorial that year as part of an outstanding season for Village Connection. So again, a big thank you to our 2 guests who joined us tonight, Ken Middleton, Ken Warkentin. A lot of fun, guys. Hope it was some good memories for you going back and looking at you guys in your younger days and some great champions.
Yeah, those were really fun days. I mean, when I think back to those days, Ken, sorry to interrupt, but when I think back, when I think of Flamborough Downs, I think of fun. And it was a great experience. I learned a lot. Learned a lot about myself as well. And, you know, it was a great chapter. So I hope I can come back sometime, you know, but I don't know if that glory can be recaptured. It'd be nice.
Kenny, and maybe just some final thoughts from you as you looked back in those memories tonight.
Yeah, the memories come flooding back in a hurry. I remember when I first started at Flamborough, one of the cool thing was the TV control room was in the very bottom of the building in the basement, and I spent 2 days just going back and watching all those old Confederation Cup replays, all the elimination. It was mind-boggling to go back and see all those great horses, and then to actually be a part of it live. It was fantastic. The opportunity to do it was great. Working with all the great people there, and like I said, Charles Juravinski, his influence on giving me that opportunity, I'm thankful for the rest of my life, obviously.
Yeah, and what we did learn as well tonight is that Charlie Juravinski can rock a great suit, and Ken Warkentin can rock a white suit as well, or white tuxedo. Maybe it was a tuxedo.
Yes.
Thanks again, guys. We really appreciate you taking some time and joining us tonight. A lot of fun. Can't wait to hear you both back in the booth real soon. Thanks again, and take care. All righty.
Thank you.
Ken Middleton and Ken Warkentin,
see you guys.
Our special guest tonight as our Confederation Cup edition of COSA TV comes to an end. Join us again this coming Wednesday night when we will be back here on Facebook Live beginning at 7:30. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend.
COSA, the Central Ontario Standardbred Association, proudly serving Ontario horse people with integrity and accountability. Collaborative, supportive, helping to ensure a vibrant harness racing industry. Lifetime membership is free, and there are many benefits. Become a new member today. COSA, representing the interests of horse people racing at Ontario racetracks. To find out more, visit cosaonline.com.